want to thank all of our co-sponsors of tonight's event for collaborating with us on this event and for all the wonderful, phenomenal work that they do on behalf of domestic workers. Domestic Workers United, Andalan, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, Damayan, and the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And I also want to acknowledge the ACLU's partner organization, the New York Civil Liberties Union, who has joined Domestic Workers United in the campaign for the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights in New York, which you'll hear lots more about later. I also want to thank the NGO Committee on the Status of Women and the UN Church Center for providing this venue for this event and all the other wonderful events that have been going on for the past couple weeks. And I especially want to thank the terrific team at the ACLU, some of whom are here, who helped put tonight's event together. And thank you all again for being here for this very, very important discussion. At the ACLU, we are committed to ending discrimination and human rights abuses for all women in the United States. The workplace is one arena in which women have yet to achieve full equality, and the work of nannies, in-home caregivers, housekeepers, and other domestic laborers is amongst the most undervalued and underregulated. The isolated and often informal nature of domestic employment makes these workers particularly vulnerable to human rights abuses. But let's be clear, the exploitation, abuse, and enslavement of domestic workers are the result of discrimination based on sex, race, class, and immigration status. In New York State alone, there are more than 200,000 domestic workers. 93% of them are women, and 95% are people of color. Worldwide, there are tens of millions of women and girls employed as domestic workers. So it's high time that we as a society properly value this workforce, which is critical to the functioning of our economy, not just in the US, but globally. For the past 2 weeks, the UN Commission on the Status of Women has been reviewing the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which was adopted 15 years ago and universally recognized that women's rights are human rights. So we felt this was an opportunity to call attention to the failure of the US and other governments to live up to their obligations under international human rights law to address one of the most critical human rights issues that we face today, and also to the growing movement that workers and advocates are leading here in New York, throughout the United States, and throughout the world to address these issues. So we will begin with the film. I think we're going to do the clusters. And then we'll have a panel discussion, which my colleague Araceli Martinez-Olguin is going to facilitate, and you'll hear from all of our wonderful panelists. I'd like to just introduce our filmmakers who have been working so hard to make the film viewable. Pratita Sharma aspires to be a journalist without borders. She is currently freelancing for the Daily Beast as a video producer for a project called Women in the World, Stories and Solutions. She has also worked for the PBS documentary program Wide Angle, for a national news network in Mumbai, and for South Asian community newspapers in Northern California. Originally from India, Pratita is passionate about stories focusing on women's issues, education, and human rights, and her dream is to be a documentary filmmaker narrating extraordinary stories of ordinary people around the world. And Jessica Hopper is currently working as a desk assistant for ABC Weekend News, and last year was the recipient of the Charles Gibson Fellowship. She has also worked at the Tampa Tribune and the Miami Herald. Jessica has lived and traveled all over the world, and it is these experiences that helped her discover her love of journalism and the power of documentary to tell stories that cross cultures and reflect the common threads that we all share. Pratita and Jessica met while attending Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism, where they collaborated to form Brown Girls Productions. They recently graduated, and it was their joint master's project that produced this wonderful film behind closed doors that we're all here to see.
So our first panelist this evening is Barbara Young. Barbara Young, and we do have a mic if anybody wants it. It's at the lectern, and I'm happy to bring it over if you like. Barbara is a nanny from Barbados. She's a member of the steering committee of Domestic Workers United, an organization of nannies, housekeepers, and elderly caregivers organizing for power, respect, fair labor standards, and to help build a movement for social change. She has been a DWU member since 2001. Barbara.
I want to thank you for this opportunity to participate in this important discussion on the rights of women workers. As you said, my name is Barbara Young, and I'm a proud nanny and member of Domestic Workers United, an organization of nannies and housekeepers, elderly caregivers, fighting for dignity and respect and recognition. I'm from Barbados. I came to the U.S. back in 1993 from Barbados, where I was working as a bus conductor. At the time, the economy went very bad, similar to what's going on here now in the late 80s. And my then country Prime Minister, he approached the International Monetary Fund and to get support for the country, and he didn't get the support. One of the things that they wanted was to cut back on goods and services, and as a result of that, 943 conductors lost their jobs on the buses. And what they did was imported a whole lot of fare boxes and then made the buses into one-person operated buses. So this was a displacement for a lot of workers, and I came here to this country. In Barbados, I was also a shop steward when I worked for the transport system. I was a shop steward in the union. This couldn't help much at the time in any way. But I came to the U.S. after losing my job, and what work did I find here? But I had to start at the bottom, and I got a job working as a nanny. Working as a nanny is a very unstable job. As we that do the work like to say, it is a very unthankful job. I worked for one family for 7 years, and took care of, when I went to work with one kid, I had a second kid, I take care of that kid, and when I left there, that job, I got nothing. They offer you nothing, they give you a picture of the kids, and oh, thank you, and you know, be sorry, and all of that. And then I went on to another job, which I thought was a very good job, and then in the end, the lady said she wanted to spend more time with the kid, but she wanted really to hire some person for less. And as a result, I lost that job. And I went on to a third job, and that job just finished. I spent 8 years with that family, and almost this similar thing happened again. Because after 8 years with this one kid, and she got very close and very attached to me, the parents said, the economy bad, we can't afford you, and we're going to cut you down to 3 days a week. And I said, well, how much that would be? And when they tell me, they said, but that can't pay my bills, and the days you're offering me is like in the middle of the week, and I can't find 2 days to balance the week out. And we talked back and forth for about 2 weeks, and I went home on January 27th after I got my check. And the next week I called and I said, when am I coming in? Is it today, Monday, or tomorrow, Tuesday? And they said to me, we made other plans. They had hired somebody else in the weekend when I was home. That's my story, but my story is not unique